welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to be answering a question that I get on a pretty regular basis, and that is, what yarn should I use to make my blanket? And I get it. There are multiple stories that I have personally where I have made blankets using the wrong yarn and it was a total fail. Total fail. But I also have other stories where I've made blankets using the right yarn and had huge success stories, and it was very heartwarming, heart-filling, and just such a great experience. But how do you know if the yarn that you select for your blanket is a hit or a miss? Let's talk yarn fibers. This is going to be a section where we talk about the pros and cons of different fibers. You may want to take notes so that way you can identify which fiber might be the best choice for an upcoming project. The first fiber I'm going to talk about is wool. Wool is warm, it's breathable, it also has a good elasticity. It's also able to be found from multiple different breeds of animal, which can be very fun and exciting and really give you kind of this feel of connecting with nature. However, wool is a bit finicky when it comes to the care instructions. It has a lot of hand wash, lay flat to dry, and there are quite a few people allergic to wool. So just being aware of those things, those are more cons. The next yarn fiber I'm going to talk about is cotton. Cotton yarn is an amazing fiber to work with whenever you're dealing with warmer weather because it's breathable, it's super soft, it's easy to care for. Just throw it in the washing machine, drying machine for the most part. It's also a yarn that is hypoallergenic. Not a lot of people allergic to cotton yarns. Be aware of the different cotton yarns, however. There is some cotton yarn that is definitely for wearables. It's softer, thinner, more comfortable, and other cotton yarns that are definitely more for the washcloths, pot holders, dish towels. Silk yarn is extra special. I don't often see a lot of silk yarn where the fiber is purely silk. Silk is generally blended with other fibers. The benefits to silk is it's a temperature regulator. So you won't get too hot or too cold when wearing it. It's super soft, super luxurious. However, it is a bit spendy. So being aware of that helps you to know if silk is the right choice for the project that you're making. Linen fiber is one that I also see mixed with other types of fibers blended together. Linen is strong. It's durable, it's easy to care for. It is also a bit stiff, and that is a con for sure. It is known to soften over time and with washing, but in general, linen is known for its durability, its warmth, and being used in colder climates. Bamboo fibers are fairly new. You can find bamboo fibers in Kobu, Nubu, Trubu. There's also some other yarns I've seen that involve bamboo. Bamboo is a moisture wicker. So depending on if it's a blanket or a wearable you're wearing and it gets warm outside, it is known to keep you cooled down. It's also very soft, super comfortable to wear, and fairly easy when it comes to care instructions. Acrylic yarns are known for being extremely affordable and easy to get your hands on. It's also known for being hypoallergenic, even though I do know a couple people who are allergic to acrylic yarn, so just being aware of that. But all in all, acrylic yarn is known for being warm and comfortable and easy to acquire. Polyester yarn is known for being very strong and durable, easy to clean. However, it is known to not be as breathable as other fibers, so depending on the project you're making, polyester may or may not be the best choice. Now you know all of the pros and cons of the different yarn fibers. It makes sense why there are so many blends out there, why there's the cotton acrylic blend, why there's the wool cotton blend, why there are all of these different blends, because they're taking the pros and strengths of different yarn fibers and combining them together. All right, let's go ahead and talk yarn weight, yarn size, and why it's so important. There's actually two major reasons why knowing the yarn weight, yarn size is such a big deal. But before I dive into that, I'm going to take a drink of coffee and rehydrate myself, recaffeinate myself to move forward with this video. If you would like to buy me a cup of coffee, I would so appreciate that. I'll put a link in the description section below where you can do that. All right, so like I mentioned, two major reasons why knowing the size and weight of the yarn you're using for your blanket. Number one, the biggest one, is the thinner the yarn, the more detailed the work will be. So if you want to use a really detailed stitch, going a little bit thinner is going to be the way to go, so you can really see the details and the detail can shine. And be more pronounced, the lighter the yarn, the lighter the blanket. So if you're going into warmer weather, summer weather, baby blankets that don't get too hot, going thinner is a great idea because it's not going to be overly warm. However, working with thinner yarn takes forever. It just takes so much longer to build up the rows, and you can often feel like it's taking a lot longer to work with thinner yarn than if you were to work with thicker yarn. Also, some people have a hard time working with thinner yarn. It takes some getting used to when it comes to holding it and working with it. Once you're used to it, it's not as big of a deal, but when you're first starting out, it's definitely an adjustment. There's an adjustment period right there. The thicker the yarn that you use, one, it works up really fast because it's building up quicker. It's thicker, so it's building up quicker, and it's warm. So if you're going into colder weather months where you really want to bundle up, be comfy cozy, and you really want that just teddy bear hug feel where you cozy up on the couch or in bed or something, and you really want that feel, the thicker yarn is going to be the way to go. However, the cons to thicker yarn is one, you lose a lot of detail. The thicker the yarn is, the more detail just disappears. So if you want to use like a fancier stitch, you're not going to be able to see the detail, appreciate it with the thicker yarn as much as you could with the thinner yarn. Sometimes it'll even disappear altogether. The second thing is the thicker the yarn, the faster the skein seems to disappear. Such as the size jumbo yarn. Oh my goodness. The jumbo yarn, this one skein may get through 2 rows, depending on the size of the blanket you're making. If you're making like a receiving blanket, baby blanket, you might get 3 or 4 rows. But for a general throw blanket, yeah, this is going to be gone in like 1 or 2 rows. So you're going to find yourself buying a lot of it because it just works up super fast. So that's another con when it comes to the size. The second thing is knowing how it is labeled, the size of the yarn itself. So I would definitely keep the same size weight yarn for your entire blanket. Stick with just a size 4 or just a size 3. I would not intermix them because even though they may look very close, they may look similar, you're going to run into issues moving forward in your blanket where there are going to be sections that are thinner and thicker, and it's going to be inconsistent, and it will affect the look of the blanket. In the United States, we have the Craft Yarn Council, or the CYC, and they have identified our yarn sizes on a 0 to 7 scale. It looks like just a yarn skein with a number. The smaller the number, 0, the thinner the yarn. So 0 is like a lace or a crochet thread. The bigger the number, 7 being the largest, will be the thicker the yarn. So 7 is a size jumbo yarn. And that is our scale here in the United States. In the UK, they give a lot of their yarns names. So you have sport weight, baby weight, DK, which stands for double knit, Aran, Afghan. Then you also have the chunky, the super chunky. They have really pretty and cute names for their yarns. But more often than not, a lot of the yarn manufacturers will like to identify their yarn sizes with ply or WPI. Ply stands for the number of strands it took to put in your yarn strand, one yarn strand, how many plies it took to put in there to make it as thick as it is. So like a 4-ply yarn will have 4 little strands in the yarn, ideally. That's what they're going off of. Or they'll go off of a thickness also to keep everything in line. I see so many people frustrated over this. So be aware when you're ordering yarn. I've heard so many stories of people buying a size 4-ply yarn, thinking it was a size 4 weight yarn, receiving it in the mail, and being very confused on why their yarn is so incredibly thin. It's because they bought 4-ply instead of 4 weight, and a 4-ply yarn is like a lace, a size 1, super thin. So be aware of that. Also, WPI stands for wraps per inch. I made a whole video on this alone. If you'd like to check that out, I'll put a link in the description section below. It's a really cool feature that I think all of us benefit from knowing. Taking your yarn, wrapping it around whatever you want to wrap it, and then taking a ruler or measuring tape and measuring a 1-inch increment of all these wraps. How many wraps were you able to get in a 1-inch increment? Take that number to a chart and it will tell you what size yarn that is. For example, if you're able to get 9 to 12 wraps within a 1-inch section, that is a size 4 weight yarn. Now I have charts on all this located on my website, crochetwithtiffany.com, under resources. They're free to print out. I use mine all the time. Definitely check out my website after this video. Next, I'm going to talk about factors to consider and the intentions of the blanket that you're making. Next, let's focus on factors to consider. What are going to be this blanket's intended uses? Will it be a baby blanket? So we need to focus on soft materials, hypoallergenic. Is it going to be warm outside, cold outside? Do we need to use thinner yarn, thicker yarn for baby? How about throw blankets? Are we going to be making something that is just thrown over the back of a couch or a bed? Do we want it to be comfy cozy? Do we need to worry about it needing to be washed all the time, or is it going to just need to be washed occasionally, depending on how often it's used? Are we making a blanket that is thinner because it's summertime and we want something that we can just throw on to take the chill off? Or are we making a blanket that is for cold weather that we want to bear hug, wrap around us and keep warm and cozy? Is this an heirloom piece where we want to focus on some high quality materials that are durable and they will last over time, but also be able to show off some beautiful stitch work that you want to include within the blanket itself? Let's talk color selection. This may be the most important part of this entire video because the colors you choose for your blanket could make or break the entire project. Tips on selecting the right colors. Who is receiving the blanket? Is it a baby? If it's a baby, I would go with the color theme or baby theme that the parents have chosen for baby. Makes it super easy peasy. If you don't know, then go to Pinterest or Etsy or even do a Google search on popular baby themes for 2023. Does the person have a favorite sports team? Those are such a hit. Just use the sports team's colors. You're good. Are they an alumni of a high school or a college that they highly support? Use those colors. Does this person have a favorite color? Use that color. Or if it is a blanket that you want to make for their living room or for their bedroom, maybe you could even check out the space yourself, see what theme they have. Is it boho? Is it neutral, traditional? Do they stick with a lot of bright colors, bold colors, or are they very browns and creams? Things that you can definitely take into consideration when selecting the colors that you want to use for the blanket you are making for that space. Oh, we're not done yet. Next, we're going to talk about yarn textures and stitch definition. There are so many different textures of yarn nowadays, it's hard to keep up. From velvets and silks to ruffles and furs, braids, and yarns with little pom-poms in them. There's so much fun yarn to play with, but before you go to the yarn store and get overwhelmed by all of the options, have a plan. Who is the blanket intended for, and what is the stitch that you plan on using within the main body of the blanket? Why is it important to know who it's intended for? Does this person have a sensitivity? I know for me personally, there is some teddy bear yarns and textures that I can't touch it. It just gives me that, nope, thank you. My daughter, it's fleece. She doesn't like anything that feels like fleece. If it's for baby, there are some yarns that have little wispies that come off. And if I were to literally like shake this yarn, a bunch of little wispies would come off of it. Now this is stuff that baby can breathe in and it can be a hazard. So being aware of that before you go and buy a bunch of it is gonna be a good idea. So yeah, have in mind who it's intended for. Even ask them if you need to, like, hey, do you have a sensitivity to wool? Do you have a sensitivity to any particular fibers that you just don't like? That way you know what to steer clear from. Also, knowing what stitch you want to use within the main body of the blanket, because the higher the texture of the yarn, the more you're gonna lose stitch definition. So if you really wanted the stitch to be the star of the show and be defined and really pop, I'd probably go with something more non-textured, so that way you can really see everything that stitch has to offer. Let's talk yarn prices and availability. Now, before you go and resort to purchasing yarn from your local yarn shop, buying whatever they have in stock, check online, even if it's michaels.com, joann's.com, or hobbylobby.com. Oftentimes online, they'll have more color options and sometimes even better sales. Other yarn shops online that you can check out would be Hirschners.com, premieryarns.com, lionbrand.com, yarnspirations.com, wecrochet.com, lovecrafts.com, hobie.com. Those are just a couple to name a few that are quite popular. If you look and reference the yarns that you're finding in store, sometimes you can find the yarn online for even cheaper. So just to be aware of prices and how to make this project as inexpensive as possible. Also be aware when purchasing yarn of seasonal yarn and special edition yarn. Not all yarn is available long term, and you definitely don't want to be stuck with starting with a yarn and then it get discontinued and you have to figure something out. All right, now that we have gone through all the steps and we've acquired the yarn that we want to use on our blanket, before you get started, swatch, 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 swatch. I know, we all hate doing it, but I can't tell you how many times, or more times than I'd like to admit, I have just dove right into a project to find that it's not working for me. There's just not a good combination, whether it's the yarn and the stitch or the crochet hook that I'm using, just not working out. And then I have to undo the entire project, hours of work. And this can be very disheartening and sometimes cause people to lose all motivation towards the project. Save yourself the hassle, the time, the frustration by just creating a small little swatch using the same yarn that you plan on using for your blanket, same crochet hook, and the same crochet stitch that you plan on using for your whole blanket. Just make a little swatch. You'll know right away if this combination is going to produce the blanket that you want to make. Honestly, when it comes to what is the best yarn for your blanket project, comes to knowing what you want out of that blanket and then playing with a bunch of yarn. There could be multiple different types of yarn that would be perfect for your blanket project, but unless you explore and play, you'll never know. Please share your experiences and recommendations of yarns to specific blanket types in the comment section below. I think this would be an amazing resource for all of these new crocheters asking what yarn would work best for the blanket project that I want to make. And there's constantly new yarns being put on the market, so just being able to know, oh, that is going to be a great yarn to use for this specific blanket type. In my experience, I think this is going to be extremely valuable, and I really thank you for participating and sharing your experience in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching my video on how to pick the right yarn for your blanket project. Please like this video, share it with a friend, and of course subscribe to my channel for more upcoming content. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have the best day, and I will see you at the next one.